The Pokemon World Tournament in Black and White 2 is one of my favorite side content features in the entire series. You get to battle gym leaders and champions throughout the first 5 generations of Pokemon. You're able to use your own Pokemon or even rent other Pokemon. You can walk down memory lane by battling the Kanto gym leaders like Brock and Misty, all the way up to the Sinnoh gym leaders like Candace or Crasher Wake, brother, and of course the Unova leaders too. And when you're all done with that, you get to take part in the Champions Tournament. That's right, Cynthia, Alder, the true Hoenn champion Steven, Lance, Blue, and the legend himself, Red, all colliding in a tournament to find out the one true champion to rule them all. Welcome folks, I'm Livvvid. In today's video, I'll be taking you on my journey through the Pokemon World Tournament. I'll be showing you the different competitions and how that process went for me. A couple of disclaimers before we begin. I was not able to download the Wi-Fi tournaments because I'm playing on my real cartridge from my previous Black and White 2 video. The Wi-Fi tournaments are no longer officially distributed. The Wi-Fi battles had different rules to shake things up a bit. Or it would give trainers like Fantina legendary Pokemon such as Giratina. I also want to make something very clear. I am not a competitive battle expert. The team I made and their moves were loosely inspired by teams I saw online. I'm just doing this for fun, and this is for your entertainment. If you're looking for elite, top-tier gameplay, this is not the video for you. For the rest of you, if you end up liking this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help and lets me know you'd like to see more of this content. Thank you. The atmosphere of this place is just so on point. It's as if Game Freak knew what this type of tournament would mean to returning players, so they made it feel like a real, grand tournament. I love Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but when you rematch gym leaders in that game, it's in a dojo, and you don't see any stands for people to watch. In the World Tournament, there are huge crowds. A massive screen showing the results of the matches and live fights. The battle music is remixed music from all over the series. It's just a huge celebration of the entire series up until this point. I would like to now introduce you to my team. I wanted to have one Pokemon from each generation, although I would only be doing single and double battles throughout this run, so that meant I could only use 4 on my team. Being that there are 5 generations at this point, that unfortunately meant that Gen 4 did not get a spot. Sorry, Sinnoh lovers. The first is Joby, the Latios. It led all of my teams and tries to hit first in the hopes of knocking out the opponent's Pokemon in one hit. Latios is also known for transporting people where they need to go in a few of the Pokemon games, which is why I named it Joby. At Joby Aviation, they're trying to transport people through the air with their pioneering electric aircraft. Powered by 6 electric motors, their aircraft can take off and land vertically, giving a flexible ability to serve customers. I must also disclose that I am a shareholder, and things are looking good. This is not financial advice. Next up is Teriyaki the Terrakion. It's another fast and powerful Pokemon specializing in attack rather than special attack. Its fighting and rock typing would give excellent boost to its moves of those respective types. Stone Edge would become an extremely valuable move going forward. Reptar the Tyranitar was next. It was my bulky meat shield meant to cause sandstorms and soak up hits with its great HP, defense, and special defense stats. Last but not least is Kentamago, the Executor. Our golden balls have come a long way since the Fire Red and Leaf Green video. During the making of that video, I had ran into this full odd shiny in the Safari Zone, which meant this thing could have easily ran away from me while trying to catch it. But luckily we caught it because I think this thing was always meant to be with us. Kentamago has gone on to be a bit of a channel mascot and a bit of a Easter egg, making frequent appearances in my videos, usually when I'm talking about transfer features within the main series games. I would also like to thank Miss Echo from our community for making and painting a little Kentamago figurine. Now, Kentamago as a battler, well, it was mostly a liability. I hate to besmirch it, but oftentimes it was just kind of there. It was too slow to go first with its powerful special attack, but it also didn't have that much bulk either, so sometimes it fainted before it could even respond. The Driftveil tournament is one of the first available, but you actually do this during the main story when Clay introduces it to you. It's just a few familiar gym leaders like Clay and Berg, but other opponents will be NPCs. Since we've already done it, we can roll right into the rental battles. The rental tournament is where you're given 6 random Pokemon to choose from. This unfortunately means I can't use my own team right now, but I've actually liked the rental battle system since I first started diving into it back when I played the Generation 3 games, so I'm fine with it. My first rental team consisted of Duosion, Blitzel, Venipede, and Petilil. The notable opponents in this bracket were Berg and Clay from their Unova gyms. The remaining competitors were just random NPCs. My round 1 opponent was against Lavina. She led with Scraggy and Purloin, which was a problem because they're both dark types, and I had chose to lead with Duosion, and that meant it unfortunately fainted pretty quickly. I then used Blitzel to set up Thunder Wave to try and disrupt the other side, but it was Venipede who absolutely took over this match because it's bug type. It would get revenge for our poor Duosion. And I also have to apologize to Venipede. I almost didn't take it for this team out of the 6 options because in my black and white experience video, its later evolution really fell off stat-wise for me. But my chat on stream insisted on taking it, and they were of course right. Venipede was awesome. Berg was my second opponent. He's a bug-type trainer from Castelia City, but in the rental battles they have random Pokemon. Unfortunately for Berg, he had chosen many victims for Venipede who were quickly taken out. But then Pawniard came in, and this thing is a miniature tank. My remaining Pokemon could barely scratch this thing. Fortunately for me though, it could barely do anything to my Pokemon. And since I had 2 Pokemon remaining, I slowly whittled it down. My final opponent was Clay, the Driftvale City gym leader and Rootin' Tootin' Cowboy. He led with Ducklet and Cottony. Finally, Blitzel being my lead actually mattered because I was able to crush Ducklet with a Spark. Eventually the fight came down to yet another Pawniard. I guess it's just the inevitable final boss I must battle. But this went pretty similar to how it went with Berg. It was a lengthy back and forth until it finally fainted. And with that, I had become the rental champion. Next up is the mixed tournament. The mixed tournament was interesting. You enter with a team of 4, but your opponents get to choose your Pokemon from your team, and you choose one of theirs to swap. The notable opponents in this bracket were Bianca and Alessa, but our first opponent was the NPC Fidel, and he took our beloved Kentamago, which pierced my heart. In return, I took their Whimsicott. My Reptar had to strike down Kentamago, and the rest of the battle was pretty trivial from there. That's because his Pokemon were not fully evolved, which created a big stat gap between us. And before you unlock the master version of this tournament, that's how the rest of these battles are going to play out. Bianca and Alessa advanced to round 2, which meant I faced Alessa, the electric gym leader. She took Reptar, and none of the options she was giving us would be great counters to it, unfortunately, because they were all electric types. But I ended up choosing Zebstrika on the off chance it had Thunder Wave. Reptar proceeded to tear up my team initially. I wonder who trained that thing. They must be really good. It was up to Teriyaki the Terrakion to finish off our friend. Once Reptar was down, the rest of Alessa's team fell quickly to Teriyaki. It used a lot of Earthquakes since Joby was able to avoid it with Levitate. And with that, Alessa falls. For the championship, Bianca advanced. Bianca takes Joby, removing my powerful special attack sweeper. In response, I take her Fracture, which would allow me to have a decently powerful Dragon-type Pokemon for myself that I wouldn't have to deal with later. After brutal back and forths with Bianca, largely due to my own Joby helping her out, it came down to Terrakion and her Duat. At only half health remaining, Terrakion was on the verge of fainting and losing this mixed battle tournament. My choice was either using Stone Edge, which had high attack power and stab bonus but a reduced accuracy, or using Sacred Sword, which is powerful in its own right but not as powerful as Stone Edge. But it is 100% accurate. Thought long and hard about it, but ultimately I chose Stone Edge and became the champion of the mixed tournament. Next up is the attendant on the right, and it's here where things get really interesting. This is where you battle the gym leaders from each region. Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, and of course Unova. The Unova tournament is first up on the list, and we must defeat it in order to unlock the rest of the regional competitions. On the right bracket was Chili vs Bryson, and Lenora vs Skyla. On the left side of the bracket, it was Drayden vs Marlin and Silent vs myself. Silent is a grass-type gym leader. I led with Reptar and Joby, and they obliterated him. Joby had Ice Beam and Reptar has Fire Punch, both being pretty devastating against grass types. The remainder of round 1 had Chili beating Bryson and Skyla beating Lenora, and Drayden won against Marlin, which meant that was my next opponent. Drayden is a Dragon-type trainer who is going to be tough to deal with. Joby used its powerful Draco Meteor to knock out Haxorus and Salamence, but eventually it fell to the Druddigon. It was then up to Teriyaki to use Sacred Sword and slice through the remainder of this team, and just like that, we advanced to the finals. Chili defeated Skyla, so that would be our next opponent. And our bases were pretty covered for fire types, since we had Earthquake users with Reptar and Teriyaki, and then I had Joby who had Surf. While Surf actually hurts Reptar during the battles, all that EV training bulk I gave him in HP and special defense really paid off because he barely flinched at Joby's Surfs. And that meant Reptar could survive and follow up with its own Earthquakes. And with that, I am crowned the Unova Leaders Champion. After defeating the Unova tournaments, the remaining tournament brackets for the other regions open up. You can actually do them in any order you'd like. But I wanted to go from Kanto all the way through the generations into Sinnoh. This Kanto tournament was a wild one. On the left side of the bracket, it was Erica vs Sabrina and Blaine vs Lieutenant Surge. On the right was Giovanni vs Brock and myself vs Janine. For those who are wondering, Janine replaced her father Koga as a Fuchsia City gym leader after he joined the Elite Four in the Johto games. Janine leads with an Ariados and Venomoth. I didn't realize how fast Venomoth's flying animation was here, and it caused me a lot of trouble too. It mauled Joby pretty quick after setting up Quiver Dance. Her Weezing was also a great, bulky wall that I had to Mongol my way around with attacks from Reptar and Teriyaki. The rest of round 1 had Erica beating Sabrina, Lieutenant Surge beating Blaine, and Giovanni defeating Brock. And it looks like I'll have to make sure Giovanni blasts off again. My initial assault was powerful, Joby and Reptar both using powerful attacks to take out his Sand Slash and Rhyperior. But Golem and Nidoking's response was punishing and took out my Pokemon. It was now up to Kentamago and Teriyaki to save the day. Teriyaki's follow-up Earthquake sealed my victory. For the finals, Erica defeats Lieutenant Surge. So it was her and her Grass-type Pokemon fighting me for the Kanto title. She led with Bellossom and Vileplume. She kept trying to set up a Swords Dance for each of them, so I made sure to bully whichever one was doing the setup. Things were initially going well, but then her Tangrowth one-shotted my Joby with a Sucker Punch. Between Reptar's Fire Punch and Joby's Ice Beam, she didn't really stand a chance, and with that, I became the Kanto champion. The Johto tournament was next. On the right side of the bracket was Whitney vs Faulkner and Bugsy vs Claire. On the left side was Morty vs Price and Jasmine vs me. Jasmine is a Steel-type trainer, and my team showed it can bend steel because she just couldn't keep up with Reptar's Earthquakes and Fire Punches. The rest of round 2 had Whitney defeating Faulkner and Bugsy defeating Claire, which may be the biggest upset in this tournament yet. Price also defeated Morty, which meant he was my next opponent. Price is a powerful Ice-type trainer, and he slaughtered Joby. Teriyaki avenged Joby by taking out Mamoswine, but then there was Weevil, a Pokemon family line I've hated since my Gen 4 videos. And I lost. Yeah, Weevil took out Kentamago, and Lapras landed a Blizzard that of course froze our Teriyaki solid. And with that, I lost my first tournament. I couldn't give up though. I decided to replace Reptar with Teriyaki and have him and Joby leading for maximum offensive speed and power. For my second attempt, the right side of the bracket had Chuck vs Bugsy and Whitney vs Price. And good, because I want that rematch. We just have to hope he makes it to the finals. Then there was Morty vs Claire and Faulkner vs me. So far, my maximum speed and power strategy was working. Joby and Teriyaki mauled Faulkner's flying types in record time with Stone Edge and Thunderbolts. The other results for round 2 was Chuck defeating Bugsy, Price defeating Whitney, good, and Morty defeating Claire, which meant Morty was my next opponent. Morty was going to cause me fits because my coverage for ghost types wasn't that great. A bit of an oversight on my end. My best bet was Reptar using its Crunch, so that's what I had to do for most of this match. I had to check a lot of my non-super effective moves from the other team members, which would help set up Reptar to finish off the remainder of Morty's Pokemon with Crunch. With careful Captain Crunch tactics, I defeated Morty. This meant it was Chuck versus Price to find out the opponent for the finals. I wanted Price to win so bad. I want my rematch. But Chuck is a fighting type trainer. Surely he was going to beat Price. Except no. Price beat Chuck. So we got our rematch, the rematch of the century. This time Price led with Cloyster and Mamoswine, and I had all the answers. Joby took out Cloyster and Teriyaki took out Mamoswine, and then his Dugong and Jinx came out and met a similar fate. So that meant no rematch with Weevil and Lapras, and honestly that was probably for the best because Weevil has seemingly had my number for a while now. With the lessons learned from the Johto battles, I was ready for Hoenn. The Hoenn bracket's left side was Norman vs Flannery and Tate vs Winona Ryder. Its left side was Liza vs Brawley and myself vs Watson. If my team's strong at anything, it's with ground type attacks. Teriyaki's Earthquake toppled Watson's electric type Pokemon very quickly. The remaining results for round 2 were Flannery defeating Norman, Winona defeating Tate, and Liza defeating Brawley to battle me in round 2. Liza was tricky for me because again Psychic and Ghost type seemed to be my biggest troublemakers with team composition to deal with. It would be up to Reptar and its Captain Crunch tactics to save me yet again. But things became a little bit annoying because Liza's Gardevoir used Hypnosis on it, and I had to patiently wait for its nap to end in order to Captain Crunch my way to victory. Luckily, Reptar finally woke up, well rested, and saved the day. For the final match, Winona defeated Flannery, which meant I would face her flying types for the champion of Hoenn. and even I can't make this sound like a challenging battle. I just had too many answers to her flying types with Stone Edge and Thunderbolt. And with that, I've become the Hoenn champion. Sinnoh was the last of the regional tournaments. The right side of the bracket had Gardenia vs Maylene and Fantina vs Rourke. The left side had Candace vs Crasher Wake Brother and Byron vs myself. This battle was absolutely brutal because Byron's Fortress set up light screen and had a berry that reduced fire type attacks, so it was able to protect itself and the team. I really thought I was about to lose this fight, but somehow Kentamago grinded out a victory despite none of its attacks being super effective against it. The remaining results for round 1 were Maylene defeating Gardenia, Rourke defeating Fantina, and Wake defeating Candace, making him my round 2 opponent. Crasher Wake stood absolutely no chance to Kentamago's typing and Giga Drain. For the finals, it came down to me versus Maylene, the fighting type trainer. She leads with Lucario, and I don't know where this fear comes from, but I've always been really scared of Lucario from a battling perspective. Like, I'm always worried it's just going to one-shot my entire team. But Terrakion alleviated my fears by one-shotting it with Sacred Sword. With Maylene defeated, I am the champion of the Sinnoh tournament. Having defeated the Sinnoh tournament, that means I've done all the regional tournaments. And I've now unlocked the World Leaders, Rental Master, Mix Master, and Type Master tournaments. I'm not going to do those last 3 tournaments as they're similar to the things I've done before, but now they have fully evolved Pokemon and the gym leaders from all the regions mixed in. The World Leaders tournament is a mix of the gym leaders from all 5 regions. Even before this, it was cool seeing the gym leaders within the regions battle it out, but now having them all jumbled together, you get to see some really interesting matchups. The only downside of this as far as progression goes is that you need to beat this tournament 10 times in order to unlock the next one. I'm not going to detail all 10 runs, but I will describe the events of the final 10th run. The right bracket had Tate versus Lieutenant Surge, and Chuck vs Blaine. The left side had Giovanni vs Norman, the battle of the absent versus present fathers, and myself versus Clay. This battle was kind of made for me to breeze through. Teriyaki and its Sacred Sword meant Clay's mix of ground and steel types just stood no chance. The remainder of round 1 saw Tate beating Lieutenant Surge, Blaine defeating Chuck, and Giovanni defeating Norman. So the boss wants to lose to a kid again, huh? Well, unfortunately for Giovanni and his ground types, I was matched up for him pretty well just like I was for Clay. They even both lead with a Crocodile. However, Teriyaki actually got taken out by Rhyperior. My team was ready though, between Joby using Surf and Kentamago using Psychic on his Nidoking. After defeating Giovanni, the other round 2 match had Blaine defeating Tate, setting up the 10th and final World Leaders tournament. I know this run seems a bit anticlimactic, but Blaine was set up to lose just like the ground type trainers were before him. Joby could use Surf, and I had 2 Earthquake users who wiped the floor with Blaine's fire types while Joby avoided getting hit by them due to Levitate. With Blaine defeated, I become the World Leaders champion for the 10th time, and that meant I unlocked the Champions bracket. This bracket is of course nothing but absolute world beaters. Champions from all the games up until this point in the series battling it out to see who will be the one to rule them all. And folks, I'm not gonna lie to you, this tournament absolutely kicked my ass. I did get to the finals a few times, but the truth was, my team just didn't have the diversity needed to answer how good their teams were. And since many of these champions have really diverse teams, it meant they had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. So I ended up finally playing in single battles. This would give me a little bit more control and less variables to consider. The final team was Joby, Teriyaki, and Kentamago. The Champion of Champions tournament is about to begin. On the left bracket, we have Wallace versus Blue, and Red versus Cynthia. On the right is Steven versus Alder, and myself versus Lance. It started off with Joby versus his Dragonite, but I knew from my past ass kickings that Dragonite had Focus Sash. I knew I could outspeed it, but I also knew Dragonite would survive and its follow-up attack would knock Joby out. So I switched to Kentamago, who was meant to soak up some damage, and it basically fainted for nothing because it simply wasn't fast or bulky enough to do anything. My poor golden balls. Teriyaki came in, and I had it use Sacred Sword initially because I wanted to hit the land and get around using Focus Sash. Teriyaki survived an Ice Punch and used Stone Edge. Lance's Flygon was next, and I was kinda stuck. Because I was kind of nervous about the odds of a third Stone Edge landing, I decided to just land a Sacred Sword on it, knowing Teriyaki was probably going to get destroyed immediately after. But I wanted to increase Joby's odds of taking Flygon out by at least getting one hit on Flygon. Looking back, I probably should have just risked using another Stone Edge though. Joby then took out Flygon with an Ice Beam, and it was both of us down to our last Pokemon. I knew I outsped Kingdra and just needed to land one Draco Meteor, and luckily I did it. With Lance defeated, we move on to round 2. The remainder of round 2 had Blue defeating Wallace, Cynthia defeating Red, and Alder defeating Steven, and that meant Alder was our next opponent. Alder led with his Volcarona, who I knew had a 4x weakness to rock, so I quickly switched out to Teriyaki for a powerful Stone Edge. Crocodile followed up, and I wasn't worried at first because I feel like every other time I've used Sacred Sword on Crocodile in this tournament, it's gone down in one hit. Well, this one clung on with like 1 HP. Its follow-up Earthquake unfortunately ate up the Teriyaki. Joby had to come in and clean up the leftovers of Crocodile. Alder's final Pokemon, Rheaniclus, was so damn bulky yet powerful at the same time. It poisoned Joby and whittled it down. Not only was it bulky, but it also had Recover and Leftovers, so this thing would just sit around long enough for poison to kill its opponents. Kintamago was my last hope. I had to land Sleep Powders just to give me some time to land a few shots before it recovered all of its health. Luckily, both of my Sleep Powders landed and I was able to defeat Alder. Blue ended up beating Cynthia, which meant he was the final opponent to see who'd be the champion of champions. I don't care how old I get or how many times I've beaten him before, Blue scares me. Blue leads with his Exeggutor. Since I know that Pokemon very well, I knew I could outspeed it and take it out with Joby's Ice Beam. Gyarados came out next, and it has 4x weakness to electric type moves. Joby knew Thunderbolt, so it fell just as quick. Now came Alakazam, the absolute terror of these runs. I had faced Blue multiple times before this, and his Alakazam alone is what was stopping me from advancing. It was just too fast and powerful, and you know it's good because it has spoons. It easily destroyed Joby and Teriyaki, which meant my only hope was Kintamago, and I wasn't exactly hopeful. Although I love this thing, it oftentimes was the weakest link on my team. It was just too slow against Alakazam, and it didn't know anything that was super effective against it. What hope did I have? I may have lost faith in Kintamago, but it didn't lose faith in itself. It somehow survives a super effective Shadow Ball. I use Sleep Powder to give me some breathing room, and it lands. I then use Giga Drain since it benefits from a stab boost and gives me some health back. But then Alakazam wakes up after only being asleep for 1 turn. It uses another Shadow Ball, and I wasn't sure if Kintamago could survive for a follow-up attack. But it barely hangs on. With a follow-up Giga Drain, Alakazam falls to the Golden Balls. Even when I gave up on it, Kintamago refused to give up on itself. With that, I've become the champion of champions. The Pokemon World Tournament is awesome. The presentation, the way it celebrates all of the generations up until Unova, the music, the incredible scenarios that play out, it's perfect for someone who likes earlier Pokemon generations like I do. If I try my best to remove my biases, I believe the Battle Frontier in Pokemon Emerald is better overall than this tournament, simply for its wide-ranging diversity in battle styles, and how much time you can spend getting all the medallions. But I'll say I like this for a much different reason. I get much more excited and giddy to play the World Tournament due to my love for this series from this era. Folks, that's all I've got for the Pokemon World Tournament in Black and White 2. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Thank you to my YouTube channel members Quinn, Chris Redbeard, and Brewham. And to my patrons Shio, Lyra, Eon Kane, Martane, Smudge, Brooks, and new member Jonathan C. My Patreon is free, so check it out to see what I'm up to behind the scenes. But if you become a paid member, either on YouTube or Patreon, I'll shout you out in my videos, and it directly helps me bring everyone content for a long time. If you'd like to watch me live, check out my second channel, Livvvid Live, or on my Twitch page, Livvvid. Links to everything I just mentioned in the description below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.